Mr. Turner as well. Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge Eiserloh. As you know from the pleadings in the docket, we're here today on a motion to modify. It's our final hearing. Mr. Turner and Mr. Medina previously at our last hearing last August, just thought I might give you a little background, had also filed a motion to enforce some attorney's fees and I think a visit that didn't occur last summer. And that was resolved. We had orders on temporary orders in order to come back here. We tried to get back before school, as we always do, but unfortunately, schedules and other things prevented us from getting back before school. So here we are. Basically, I think what you're going to hear is very similar to what got heard in the temporary orders, with the exception that, we've had about a little over a year come by, and things have not seemed to improve much. The main issue last year, which is still the issue this year, is we've got a young man who is the youngest of the 3 children of these parties. He is on the spectrum, but he is quite brilliant and smart. And last year was accepted into a very prestigious magnet school, but there was a dispute that arose between the parents about whether or not he should attend, because it is in the San Antonio area where McSmith now currently resides, and Mr. Medina still lives in the Pflugerville area. What our position is, and that I think you'll hear from Mom and from the child when you talk to him, is that there have been tremendous amounts of lack of co-parenting. Even though Mr. Medina has the exclusive rights, they are after consultation with Mick Schmidt, and I think you'll hear testimony from her that just doesn't happen. That this child again got accepted into this wonderful program that is very science and math related, which he tends to excel at, and that Mom and Dad still can't agree on whether or not he should attend. That he has made it pretty adamant, at least to Mom, and we think to others, that he does not want to continue in the Pflugerville ISD, that he very much wants to attend these programs, but that parents can't agree on it. I think that one of the major problems here is that this child doesn't feel heard. That he really wants to attend these. He's old enough now to, I think, pretty well articulate to you and to whoever wants to listen to him what his desires are. It's not a lack of love for Dad, but the acrimony and the other issues that have occurred over the last couple of years that this case has been going on. I think you'll see a lot of docket entries that we just can't seem to get this resolved. And when parents have shown an inability to co-parent and to consult with each other meaningfully, then it becomes a problem. And that's one of the main reasons I am often, I know you haven't had me in front of you before, I'm often very, very reluctant to have judges confer with children, not because I don't trust them, just because I hate to put them in the middle, and certainly only if they're a bit older and I think they can articulate. And my policy is that I always ask for it to be done without a record, because I want the young man to be able to speak freely to you and say whatever is needed to say. I think sometimes when records are asked for, that speaks volumes, because I feel like the main intent is for him to feel open to talk to you, and maybe he won't say what we think he's going to say, but that's what we, believe that it's important for you to hear, especially at his age. And with everything coming up with high school and college prep and everything else, what his desires are as far as wanting to attend a different school rather than where his father is an employee in the Pflugerville IFD. And there's some other issues I think you'll hear about too, why it's not a comfortable environment for him. But that's primarily what we're asking you for today, because the other issues I think have been resolved, unless Mr. Turner wants to correct me on that.
All right, very good. Mr. Turner, how would you like to respond, please?
Well, thank you, Honor. First of all, one thing that Ms. Sheridan and I do agree upon is how distasteful it is to have a child confer with the judge. This will be the fourth time that Ms. Schmidt has had this child confer. Fourth. And this past summer, a year ago, it wasn't that there was a missed visit. Ms. Schmidt unilaterally withheld the child for 2 months, unilaterally signed him up for a different school and we had this, what I'm hearing so far, and based on the evidence, the proposed exhibits, this is the exact same hearing we had with Judge Swordfer for the last time. And at the conclusion of that hearing, Ms. Schmidt was held in contempt. Ms. Schmidt was ordered to pay fees. And
But
so,
let me ask you, Mr. Turner, is that, I thought y'all had resolved that. Are we back to contempt and fees, or isn't that?
no, but that's what happened. That's the correction of what happened last time.
Okay,
It
well,
wasn't
that's
that there
nice,
was
but
an
that's not what we're looking at right now. So let's go,
Correct.
let's be forward-thinking people, okay? Not
Correct.
back-thinking people, because I can't, I tell you, if I looked every single slight or zip or zap that's happened in the past, we would be here all day talking about that. So please, going forward, what are we looking at?
Yeah, well, Your Honor, in all due respect, I don't find a finding of contempt. I don't believe a finding of contempt is a small thing or a zip or zap. I'm
No, I
sorry.
think it's a big thing. Mr. Turner,
Correct.
please don't argue with me. Please talk about going forward. I'm sorry, maybe that storm kept me up a little too late last night, but I need to know looking forward, what that looks like, okay? What are we wanting? What are your response to what Ms. Sheridan just said? We're talking school in San Antonio, school in Pflugerville. You've given me your views on talking to the kid. Tell me more.
Well, Your Honor, this child has lived in the same school district area of town his entire life.
Okay.
He is situated there. And the father has had the same job for a very long time. The father is very stable. The child is very stable. The child has never known anything less than a 50-50 with his father his entire life.
Okay.
And there is nobody on this earth, and Mr. Medina has had primary of this child for the last 3 years. There's nobody on earth that knows this child better than his father.
Okay.
No one. And the child is on the spectrum. Mr. Medina is fully aware and capable. Mr. Medina has taught at this school for some time. It is beneficial to Josh to be in this proximity to his father in the event that there is something that happens, which you will hear testimony about his anxieties and the like. And there have been situations already prior to this year and during this year where his father came in and was able to help him immediately due to the proximity. And so you will also hear testimony that Josh is doing very well. He's making friends. He's on the swim team at the new high school. He's joined the computer science club. So he is actually doing well and thriving.
Let me ask you, Mr. Turner, high school, what I understood is the child is 13 years old. What is he doing on the high school swim team?
Well, he's a ninth grader.
Okay. All right. Okay. Just seemed a little young for high
Well,
school.
I agree on the 13th. So let me look real quick. No, he's 14. He's 14. It's February 8th, 2009.
Okay.
So he's actually 4. I thought that sounded off too.
Yeah, I was just curious about it. I've kind of recently been through the high school, junior high school, and I was thinking 13 just seemed young, but anyway.
I agree. So Mr. Medina's gone through this every 2 years where there's been a petition to do something, where there's been a confer with the same child or all the children. And we just need enough's enough and we need to move forward. And so we're asking that it be denied. We're again asking for fees because again, this happens every 2 years where he's defending himself. And virtually every other one, there has been an award of fees.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Strauss, Judge Swordfer now twice.
Yeah, I saw those orders in there. Okay, very good. All right. So with that, thank you so much.
May I make a brief response to that, Judge, just so you have a little background on this, but I'll only talk if you say I can.
No, go ahead. Just to let the parties know, this is not evidence, and I don't take this as evidence. If I did, I would lose my mind. So lawyers talk at me all day long. The only ones I really want to hear from are Mick Schmidt and Mr. Medina. But anyway, Ms. Sheridan, please, by way of reply, what else do you have for me?
The only thing I would note, Judge, is that the last hearing was a temporary orders hearing. And as you are familiar with, there's a different standard in changing primary on temporary rather than final. And so I can't speak to what Judge Schweifer was thinking, but I would point out that it's a different deal, and that the contempt, with the exception of the exchange, which our position is the child refused to return, not that she withheld him, but regardless of that, he didn't return on that one weekend. And but I also recall, and Mr. Turner can correct me, but I do recall that Judge Schweifer at the end of the hearing really wanted these parents to, starting in January or February, start talking about, what's going to happen for the next school year. And that's part of our just overall issue as to why there's such a co-parenting disconnect, apparently, which is why we want you to consider what we're asking for today.
Let me ask you a question, Ms. Sheridan. Our
Yes,
Travis County Domestic Relations Office has co-parenting classes, and I've heard some good things about. Have these parties ever taken one of those?
not that I'm aware of. Do you know? Because I wasn't in on the divorce initially. I've only been in the modification. I think Mr. Turner's been in since day one, so he could speak to that.
Mr. Turner?
I'm not aware of any co-parenting classes. I'm pretty sure that Mr. Medina may have done the online one during the pendency of the original divorce, but I don't know if they've actually both gone to something.
Yeah, it's just something we might keep in mind. They're free, great price. And like what much of Travis County offers, they're very high quality. So it might be something we look at. Anyway, doesn't matter. We'll take that one up later. All right. So Ms. Sheridan, since this is your motion, if you want to start, and Mr. Turner and Mr. Medina, please keep in mind that they're going to they go first because they made the motion. But I am not, my mind remains completely unmade up. I know nothing about you all, and I'll wait till I hear all the evidence. So don't let the fact that they're going first concern you overly much. All right, Ms. Sheridan, please proceed.
Thank you. I would call Mix Schmidt as my first
My
witness.
pronouns are they, them, and theirs. I prefer going by my middle name, Brooke, as opposed to Amber. And my honorific is Mix, spelled M-X.
All right. Do you currently have a job?
I am currently in graduate school, and I am currently on disability for long COVID and sequelae.
And what was the last one?
Sequelae, it is a Latin term for medical. That means people that had the COVID-19 disease and have not fully recovered. So I am in physical and occupational therapy for that.
Okay. What are you in graduate school for?
I am working on my PhD in school psychology, and also looking at interdisciplinary learning and teaching.
All right. Tell us a little bit about what you did before becoming a graduate student.
I have been a public educator for over 13 years in various districts, including Pflugerville ISD, where Mr. Medina teaches. That was my first school district, and one of my last school districts. The primary reason for moving between school districts was typically a higher salary for my position. I received my master's degree in educational psychology during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I was a master's level education teacher for the past 2 years before I had got COVID.
And where were you this teacher for the last 2 years?
I was in Northeast ISD in San Antonio. I worked as a vertical alignment specialist for all grade levels of mathematics and how to implement them for students who were performing below or above grade level.
All right. Now, when were you originally married to Mr. Medina?
Our marriage was in June of 2020, June 17th of 2020. We divorced. I filed for divorce in October of 2015. We went to trial.
Anyway, we got a problem here. 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
I apologize. 2000.
Okay.
Sorry. June 17th of 2000. It just seems so long ago. And then we went to trial for the divorce in July of 2016. But the divorce papers were not signed until November of 2017.
Right. Were you represented at the time?
I was, Mr. Aaron Azell, both starts with an E, was my counsel at the time.
Okay. For the divorce.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, you and Mr. Medina, you were married quite a while. So tell me, besides Joshua, who we're here about today, do you have any other children together?
We have adult twins. They are 19.
Do they live with you or do they live independently?
No, they live in their own place near campus.
Okay. Describe their relationship with their little brother, Joshua.
The three of them are like angry little peas in a pod. They're very close, but they do get on each other's nerves. That typically happens with younger brothers. A few weeks ago, Tina told Josh, that is very freshman of you to say, to something he brought up, which was cute. But they very much love each other. The twins have a separate bed and little area for Josh to sleep in when he comes to visit them at college. And they take him around campus to show him what it's like. And they love to play with him. They try to connect with him online multiple times a week. They're very loving to each other, and sometimes take on that parenting role when Mr. Medina and I are not available.
Okay. Now, how long have they lived on their own at college?
2 years. Well, 1 full year, and then so far this semester.
All right. Where did they live before?
They lived with Mr. Medina and went to Weiss High School.
Okay. Now, you have concerns about, before we get into the co-parenting and some of the other areas of dispute that you and Mr. Medina have, let's talk about just your concerns educationally, not only as an educator, but a mother, about Joshua attending Weiss High School.
So Weiss, Joshua is identified under IDEA as a student who needs of special education services. He qualifies under autism, other health impairment, OHI, for his attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. He has hyperactive form. Specific learning disabilities. He had dyslexia. He has dysgraphia. And then he was originally in special education at the age of 3 for speech delay. My concerns with the high school, in particular where Mr. Medina works, where Josh goes to school so far this year, and where the twins went to school for their sophomore through senior years, due to a confusion then about where they should go, because they did not start there, is that the staff at Weiss High School were discriminatory against the older 2 siblings for their 504, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, of their 504 plans for accommodations. Some of the teachers told them outright, we don't believe you have a disability.
Objection hearsay. Objection hearsay.
Okay, the objection is sustained. Nick Schmidt, please try not to provide information that was told to you by others, and watch the narrative form of the question. Just respond to what your attorney is asking you. All right, please proceed, Ms. Sheridan. Okay.
Thank you. Nick Schmidt, if you could tell me, without talking about what the teachers told you, what is your understanding of the issues, the legal issues that are going on regarding your older 2 children and the school that dovetail into your concerns for Joshua?
We went through the normal recourse for working with the school district to get the children the accommodations that they were required by law. It did not work out. There is currently a Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, OCR complaint against the school district. It is still under investigation on the OCR's website. It's dated 9/2 of 2021 for disability discrimination. I am no longer part of that. Since my children are over 18, they are the plaintiffs on that one. But the language that began the main complaint is still part of the high school handbook for the school district.
And so why does those issues involving your older children cause you concern for Joshua attending that school?
The language that is concerning is in the handbook is that a student that has a
I'm sorry, Your Honor, this is hearsay as well. Objection.
Well, if you could, I guess, or they could introduce the handbook instead of trying to quote from it. I do think there's an issue there, Ms. Sheridan. So objection is sustained. Let's try to get sort of the handbook.
Right.
Okay.
But Mick Smith, just tell me what your concern is about how your concerns about what's going on with your older kids, how that might impact Joshua and leading to your concerns about him actually attending WISE.
Certainly. The students that have a disability are not allowed in advanced classes where Josh would best benefit unless they give up having accommodations in the school district. This was the issue for my older two children. They failed many classes for 2 of their years, sophomore and junior, because they did not receive accommodations. In their senior year of high school, they dropped all advanced placement courses and graduated at the lower quarter of their graduating class. Because they did not receive accommodations and did not have free access, free appropriate public education under federal law, when they went to college, they were denied 4-year scholarships for full tuition.
And so how does that relate to Joshua?
Joshua is in the same boat where Joshua has accommodations, and if they are not met with fidelity as they are required by law, because of a practice of the school district that is currently under investigation by the Office of Civil Rights, then there is also a high propensity for Joshua to not pass certain classes, especially if he wants to take them as advanced. So this year, Joshua is limited to only 1 advanced class in mathematics and has decided to take everything else at the lower level, below his ability and below accolades, so that he can have his accommodations in place.
All right. Let's switch gears a little bit about the special school that that you believe would be best beneficial to Joshua, and tell us a little bit about that.
The school in San Antonio is a magnet program, and it is backed by NASA. They have several teachers there from NASA. It is called SETA, the Space Engineering Technology Academy. It was formerly DATA, the Design Academic Technology Academy. But the magnet program has now split into 2 because there were so many students. Joshua was the one who originally showed interest in the school, regardless of the custody arrangement. I happened to be a teacher at the middle school where the magnet program was housed. I was not a teacher at the program. And Josh went with me after school one day to pick something up and saw the flyers and was just super hyper fixated and excited about it. He has requested multiple years to be part of the program. I have brought it up with Mr. Medina multiple times over multiple years to discuss the matter. The matter has never been discussed. Joshua himself signed himself up on the website last year to be part of the high school program. And when he was accepted himself. We again tried to have a discussion with Mr. Medina. Mr. Medina's response, as my understanding is that Mr. Medina's choice is the only choice. Always.
Did you have ever any
I'm
meaningful?
sorry, that sounded to me like that was hearsay too, because she said what it sounded like, sounded like it was coming through the child.
What I heard was that they had an issue with Mr. Medina kind of saying my way or the highway is what I heard. Now, maybe I misunderstood that, but I'm not going to object to it. It was pretty vague. So please proceed, Ms. Sheridan.
Thank you. So in your prior orders, when Mr. Medina ended up with the exclusive right to make educational decisions along with some others, did it require him to consult with you in a meaningful manner before those decisions were made?
Yes, and it still does.
Okay. How many meaningful conversations were you able to accomplish with Mr. Medina regarding this particular subject, both last year after we filed this and in anticipation of this school year?
0.
Okay. Did you attempt to?
Yes, ma'am. Almost monthly, through multiple means of communication. I attempted in person once, outside of his vehicle, but he drove off. And I've attempted through messages as many ways as possible during special education meetings, bringing it up. It is always shut down as dad gets to decide, period.
All right. So with respect to your conversations or communications with Mr. Medina, how would you normally attempt to communicate with him?
I typically attempt to communicate over email. We did try the Family Wizard app for a co-parenting tool after Judge Soifer suggested it at the last hearing. I am still on the app, but Mr. Medina went off the app right before, less than a month after being on it. So we have a couple, pardon me, we have a couple of communications there, but not many. Whenever there is a communication attempt on my part, there is just no response on Mr. Medina's part, usually for over a week or more until he says, "This is my decision."
All right. Does he ever ask you for your reasonings for wanting to make a change or ask you for your input?
No.
All right. Tell the court a little bit about, I know you've told the court about Joshua's intelligence and all that kind of thing. Can you just describe for Judge Eiserloh? I know hopefully she'll be meeting him either via Zoom or some other way later on, but kind of give her a flavor about the kid that Josh is.
Josh is a unique genius. Being a math teacher, I would call him a polymath. He understands mathematical concepts that would take me years to study to even be able to point out. He loves video games, but he loves the ones where he can design them himself and where he chooses how to do them. And he has been writing computer programming by hand for years, sheets and sheets of it. He loves games and rules. He loves to swim. He has a difficult time making friends that are his own age unless they are of a gifted nature, because he doesn't know how to talk to them. He's not interested in, typical teenager things like texting on the phone, social media, anything like that. But he does like talking with other students about bigger ideas and how could, they make them bigger. So he does very well with gifted students his own age. He is extremely bendy.
What does that mean?
When you speak with him, if his elbows and arms are going all different directions, like that looks like a contortionist or something, or he's sitting weird, that's normal for him. He takes a while to answer a open-ended question because he needs time to process what it means. But a lot of times the answers that he gives you are very mature and profound. And he does well in school, mostly because he has an anxiety of not finishing something. So he is fixated on finishing something when he can. His anxiety will pop up when he runs out of time, when he feels like he can't complete something or explain something to his best ability.
Now, in opening statements, I think you probably heard Mr. Turner refer to, because you brought this up and it made me think of it, is Josh's anxiety, and that Mr. Medina was close by so he could help handle that. at the moment. Now, if Josh were to be able to relocate to San Antonio to attend the school and live with you, how accessible are you to Josh if he has some issues at school or otherwise?
Well, I do not work at the school, but I think that would be a benefit to Josh to not having his parent there at all times, especially now that he's in high school. I am in the neighborhood and close by. His siblings are close by. His maternal grandparents are close by. So we are close by. We're within a 5-minute drive. Joshua's anxiety was supposed to have been treated by a psychologist outside of the school system per Judge Schleifer's orders, but I'm not sure that more than 2 sessions happened over the last year.
Okay. Do you think some sort of therapy for Joshua would be beneficial for him?
Yes.
And why is that?
The therapist that Joshua was seeing, he had been seeing for a while and had a good rapport with. And just the transitioning to high school, compounded with having special needs, is a lot. Moving to high school and middle school after your older siblings who have been there helping to watch out for you and take care of you your whole life, that's a lot. It's just there's a lot of new things he's having to manage on his own. And since part of his autism spectrum is that he doesn't always understand how social things work or how to communicate what he is feeling appropriately, I think that being with a psychologist would help with that. I also think that being a psychologist outside the school system, so there's not that complication of, is this person going to tell my teachers what I say? Just kind of having it more private is also beneficial.
Right. Is he covered by insurance of any kind?
Yes.
And how is he covered?
He is covered through me, through Blue Cross Blue Shield. The co-pays for the school psychologist were $25 a session. And he also receives some coverage through DAD, but it's a company that I have not heard for, and I don't think that it covers psychological services.
Okay. So based on your description of Joshua as a kid, not only as a budding genius, but just who he is as a kid, if he were to visit with Judge Eiserloh,
You've been pronouncing it correctly.
Eiserloh, I'm so sorry,
Eiserloh.
Eiserloh.
No,
I'm
you
so sorry.
got it right the first time, which is hard to do. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Do you feel comfortable with him visiting with her and being able to express his needs in a private and desires in a private situation without you there, without his dad there, without any reporter being there to report back to either of you what he tells in confidence to the judge?
I think that Joshua is fine answering questions, especially about himself and his interests and his wants. I know that he has, as Mr. Turner pointed out, spoken to judges in the past, as did the older children, and they are wary that when they speak to adults, they're not always heard. And
This is
they are told.
non-responsive, Your Honor.
Why is it non-responsive, Mr. Turner? I disagree with you.
Well, because
It is responsive.
they understand this and they understand that, and the older kids did this and the older kids did that, and we're talking about Josh, and so it's just a narrative beyond the question.
No, I hear what you're saying. It is narrative. It is helpful for me to hear some of the views of Mick Schmidt on these things, since I may or may not talk to Josh, and it's helpful for me to hear what they think. So I'm going to overrule the objection for now, but I think what I'm probably listening for is a little different than what you're listening for. Please proceed, Ms. Sheridan.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that question I had about as far as his ability to visit with the judge?
As I mentioned, I think that he's capable of speaking about his things. There is expressed anxiety due to the nature that when we speak with children in chambers, or when judges speak to children in chambers, they are told that what they say may have an impact, but may not. The judge is just taking it into consideration. And since they have not felt that they are always heard.
Okay.
Besides the issue with the investigation going on with the Office of, what was it, Civil Office of Civil Rights, do you have any other concerns? And I want you to do a comparison right now about what your understanding is of what can be offered at the school that he applied to last year, applied to again this year, and hopefully would be able to find a spot at some point, even if not this year. Do a comparison for the judge about why you think that school is in his best interest, maybe even aside from that he wants to go there, with what services he's going to be able to get and the education he would be able to get in Pflugerville.
Certainly. I won't bring up his preference at all. The school in San Antonio, as I mentioned, is a magnet program, so it is exclusive. Students have to meet certain academic criteria and a desire to go to even be part of the lottery to be chosen, and there are limited seats. The school specializes in computer science, engineering, and in this particular case, robot and rocket building as part of a NASA initiative. For a student who has very high math skills, loves to create games and engineer things on his own, that's a pretty good fit. Also, the nature of the students being selected also typically fall in the gifted area, but also a lot of times have special needs. And so the school is well aware and well equipped to deal with what we call a neurodivergent student, where they have special needs, but also gifted needs. And so they need both sides of the spectrum of education met. In Pflugerville ISD, specifically at Weiss, due to the nature of having to get to a point to file an OCR complaint, which as a teacher myself was not an easy decision. But I completely understand the ethics that teachers are supposed to follow and the laws. I get trained on it every year, just as every educator does. There has been harassment and pushback since we filed, which is understandable. And the harassment, the first harassment was in regards to Mr. Medina's job, and that he, who he was more aligned with, his employer or his children. The older children and I filed an additional harassment complaint for coercion on that one and for whistleblower. But also since then, there is apparently a notice on Josh's record that I am not allowed to speak to school officials, talk to school officials, be on school campuses, pick up Josh.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object again as to hearsay if she's referencing what these documents do or don't say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see that we don't have the documents in the file. We just have their word for it. That's all we got. I'm going to sustain the objection. Ms. Sheridan, please proceed.
Yes, McSmith, so tell me, have you attempted, let's go about this a different way. Have you attempted to consult with school officials about Joshua's education and his needs?
I have attempted to. I have brought official copies of the court records to show that I am a co-managing conservator. I was dismissed.
Okay, by whom?
By the head of student affairs and by and by Joshua's principal in middle school last year.
Were you ever able to obtain the information from the school that you were seeking as a parent?
That I was. That falls under FERPA law. So I was able to get the documents that they were referring to, and that showed up as a warning indicator on my parent side of the grades program, Skyward, through a business record affidavit of a request for records.
But besides that, have you been able to actually converse with anyone at the school, call up teachers and say, hey, how's Josh doing? Is there anything we can do to support him, or whatever purpose you would have to call them?
I have made a couple of attempts and did not receive a response back. I know that Josh's schedule was changed, and I made a request asking if it was changed due to an ARD, an annual review and dismissal process, which is a special education meeting, or if there was another reason or what the reason was. I got a very quick response that it was just due to Josh's preference. That is the only response I've received this year.
All right. As far as the ARDs, when he has special needs or has been at least recognized as someone with special needs, how often do they have ARD meetings?
So the law requires that school districts have an annual meeting of the students' goals, if they've met them, if they have not. For special education students that have an individual education plan or an IEP, the people who are required to be at that meeting are the parents, the students if they are over the age of 14 and can speak for themselves, at least one general education teacher, at least one special education teacher, an administrator, and typically in Josh's case, a licensed school psychologist.
What was the last ARD meeting you attended for Josh?
The last one that I attended was on March 20th of 2023.
All right. Are you aware of whether or not there have been any ARD meetings for this year once school started, since we weren't able to get in before school started?
I have not been made aware of any meetings at all of how his schedule was created, since he was signed up for a different high school in Pflugerville and went to Weiss.
What other school was he enrolled in?
Mr. Medina was attempting to enroll him at Hendrickson High School, which was Josh's preferred school if he had to stay in Pflugerville. It is my understanding that that school was full and not accepting transfer students.
All right. Have you been able to access any of the items from Josh's records, school records, like when ARD meetings might take effect, what his schedule is, any of those things?
I have been able to get a copy of his schedule because I have access to the online grades program. But as far as when meetings are set and communications between teachers, anything like that, I am listed as not the person to go through, that they must go through Mr. Medina first, and then Mr. Medina can decide if I get the information.
Okay. Has he made you aware of any ARD meetings this year?
No, Mr. Medina has not made me aware of any school functions, meetings, anything of that nature.
All right. Have you asked him for them?
Yes, I have.
All right. And what has his response been?
There has been no response.
Okay. What are the steps that someone has to go through to secure a space in the magnet program that we're here talking about today?
The magnet program is a citywide program, so you do not have to live in a particular part of the city of San Antonio. I think, in fact, you just have to be a Bexar County resident. And you have to make certain grades on your STAR test, and academically, you have to show an interest in wanting to go. And when you sign up, you agree to keep your grades at an acceptable level, which would be B's and A's. Josh is fully capable of that. And then also they do a lot of community service. So he is required to do some community service hours, helping other students for the community.
All right. Now, you had mentioned previously that you had attempted to provide a copy of the divorce decree that shows you, as a parent, have a right to get all of this information and consult with school officials and get that information. Do you know whether or not you were able to deliver that information, that legal document, to the school to at least have it part of Joshua's record?
I delivered it to the district head of student services, and Joshua's principal was at that meeting.
Okay. And do you recall about when that was?
That was in, I want to say, December of 2022.
All right. And since that time, some of the times that you talked about attempting to get information, have those occurred before or after December of 2022, after you attempted to provide the proof that you have the right to this information?
It was both before and after, both at the middle school that he graduated from last year and the high school at Weiss where he is now.
Okay. Now, I know you've indicated that you and Mr. Medina have been unsuccessful and unable to kind of have any meaningful conversation about this, and Joshua's attending the other school. What, if anything, has Mr. Medina said to you about any objections he has to Joshua attending the school?
Mr. Medina's objection to Joshua attending a school in San Antonio is that he is primary and that he lives in Pflugerville. His other objection was when we were still hoping for the Hendrickson as a compromise, that he attempted to put words in my mouth and say that that was my choice when it was not.
Okay. But nothing specific about the school or your ability to get Joshua to school, or any objections about what it offered or anything like that, other than he was primary and he lived in Pflugerville?
No, those were his intentions.
Okay.
His reason.
Now, with respect to, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about other health issues.
Do you want to take a little break, Ms. Sheridan? It might be a good time for one, since you're shifting gears.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm happy to. Sure.
Yeah, let's go and take our mid-morning break now. It's 10:16. We're going to take a 20-minute break till everyone have a chance to kind of regroup somewhat. I know these are emotional issues for everyone, so we'll come back in 20 minutes and resume at where you shifted gear. And you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Nick Schmidt, the gears I was going to shift to are talking about other aspects of Joshua's life, and kind of his day-to-day routines and who takes care of various things for him. But before I get there, when in relation to your divorce back in 2017, I think is when you said it was signed, when in relationship to that date did you move to San Antonio?
I moved to San Antonio in 2019. I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and then a subsequent diagnosis of stage 4 endometriosis. And so I was unable to work and went through a lot of medical procedures and surgeries, and moved back home closer to family to just help out with everything.
All right. And your family lives in San Antonio?
Yes.
Who does that consist of?
My mother and father, and now my 2 adult children.
But they have their own apartment and
Yes.
don't live with you. Okay. All right.
They live across town.
Oh, okay. So since you moved to San Antonio, what is your general schedule with Joshua then?
I have standard possession custody, where I see him the 1st, 3rd, and 5th of weekends of every month. I do not have a provision in place for seeing him during the week due to the distance of being over 100 miles. I asked on a couple of occasions to make an exception, but that was not worked out. For special events for Josh, like open house. And I am always available, though, if there is a need to take them to a medical appointment or something, and Mr. Medina can't take off work, or to get a haircut or whatever else is needed. I'll make room in my schedule to do what my children need me to do.
Given the circumstances that you've told us about, Joshua, what sorts of doctors or medical professionals does he see currently?
Joshua has a general pediatrician that in the same practice that he's had since I was pregnant with him before he was born. So they're very familiar with him. They manage his ADHD medication. As I mentioned, Josh was seeing a child and family psychologist in the Round Rock area for a good while.
Do you remember who that was?
Yes, that is Dr. Cloyd Taylor.
Okay.
But I was scheduling those before this past hearing last year, and so and then it was Mr. Medina's duty to take over from there. Josh does not have a lot of other medical doctors. He has specialists at the school in the special education department to help him when he needs accommodations or a room to cool down if he gets anxious. He was also in 2022 allowed to participate in a summer camp for autistic kids to learn how to code. And he loved that. It was down at the San Antonio Tobin Center. And free of charge, he got t-shirts, he built a little robot that delivered cake. It was adorable.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I'm objecting it's non-responsive. The question is, who are the doctors? And now we're talking about summer camps in San Antonio. Some object it's non-responsive.
All right, the objection is sustained. Please proceed, Ms. Sheridan.
Who are specifically his doctors right now?
It is my understanding it is Dr. Rafael DeHaro and Dr. Aaron Marshall.
Dr. Aharo, is he the pediatrician?
Dr. DeHaro and Dr. Aaron Marshall are both pediatricians in the same practice.
All right. Okay. Since moving to San Antonio, can you tell the judge a little bit about how often you would participate in scheduling and making doctor's visits specifically for Joshua?
When I first moved to San Antonio, it had been my, I guess, my responsibility beforehand to make doctor's appointments for the children before divorce. And so I continued with that, making annual appointments. Joshua has quarterly appointments for his ADHD as required by law since he's a minor taking a controlled substance. Planning vaccinations during the summers when we're there for his wellness checks, and then for athletic forms, that sort of thing for back to school, and then dental appointments and eye doctor appointments. Mr. Medina took over those since the last hearing.
Okay, which was last August.
Yes.
Okay. Does he inform you of those visits?
No.
Okay. How do you find out about whether or not they occurred?
I get a notification about a bill through the doctor's office. I was notified at the last doctor's notice that my medical insurance and contact information had been taken off. So they had a note from an older file and contacted.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object again. Non-responsive. There was not a question pending.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you on that one, Mr. Turner. It's overruled. What I understood the question to be was, how do you know a doctor's appointment has occurred? We heard some answer on that, which was doesn't, and then we heard a little bit more of it. I thought what was the remainder of the answer to that. So let me that's where I think we are. So I'm going to overrule that objection. Please proceed, Ms. Sheridan.
Thank you. How often, at least since August of 2022, when you say Mr. Medina took over the scheduling of the doctor's appointments, has he specifically reached out to you to discuss any of Joshua's health needs with you?
He has not reached out to discuss them. He has brought me papers from time to time of what happened at an appointment. But the papers are very vague. It just says there was an appointment.
Okay. And you generally got these after the fact?
Yes.
What do you, well, first of all, let me ask you this generally. Do you have concerns about Joshua continuing to stay primarily in the Pflugerville area, both school-wise and with regards to living with Mr. Medina?
I do.
And what are those?
School-wise, staying in a school where there's already an animosity because of what happened with the older sibling. And just the backlash of that makes it difficult for me to exercise my rights to contact the school or, you know, be there in case Mr. Medina has an emergency and Josh needs to be picked up, since I'm removed from those documents and from those privileges as a parent. I'm not notified of school events. Mr. Turner mentioned that Josh is on the swim team. I asked Josh if he could keep me posted about when he's going to have his next swim meet, and he said, I'm not allowed.
Objection, hearsay.
Yeah,
So
I think it is sustained, but anyway, Ms. Sheridan, you might be able to get that slightly different way.
Sure. What steps have you taken to try to find out events that Joshua is participating in?
I have attempted to contact the coach for the swim team, who is the same coach that coached the twins. I am able to get reminders about practices in the morning, possibly being canceled because it's an outdoor pool and it goes all the way through December, so the pool can get cold. But as far as other meets and that sort of thing, I don't have access to, so I could not go and cheer him on. I have concerns about Josh's medical, in that Mr. Medina and I aren't able to coordinate because I don't have information to remind Mr. Medina that you know, a physical would be needed to try out for an athletic team. The vaccines are available, and is he going to coordinate that, or would he like me to? You know, is there an issue with the medication? Josh has grown 5 inches just this last summer, so you know, being in communication about, is Josh's ADHD medication working throughout the day? Do we need to work together to fix those sorts of issues? Just general communication. And when I reach out to Mr. Medina, I don't get, pardon me, I don't get an answer at all. When I reach out to medical professionals, I am told I am not on the record to get information. So I feel very isolated and with my hands tied about what I can do to advocate for my child. And I feel that in the same way Josh is isolated. And my big issues with that is that being the person that took care of these sorts of things all up and through the last hearing, if nothing else, I have a vast amount of knowledge that I could share to make it easier. I have no input allowed.
Okay. You do understand under the prior orders that you do have the right to that information and to attend school activities and doctor's appointments and things like that.
Yes, I am aware of that. I bring the certified copies of the information with me when I go to appointments or when I call. I send them as a record. The most that I have been told is that there are other paperwork that supersedes it, and I don't know what that is.
Okay. Do you have to know about an event or an appointment in order to attend it?
That would be helpful, yes.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about last year, before school started, and when you previously testified that Joshua had on his own, you know, applied and done all this stuff. Were there ever any pre-school starting meetings that were available for the parents to talk to the school about what to expect if he were to attend that school?
Not for the magnet school,
Okay.
but with the middle school where Josh attended, Mr. Medina and I met at that ARD meeting in March where it was brought up. And Mr. Medina was not willing to speak about it at the time.
Okay. Speak about what? Attending that school?
Speak about attending any school that was not in Pflugerville ISD.
Okay. Has Mr. Medina ever enrolled Joshua in a school other than Pflugerville ISD?
Yes, there was registration paperwork for the school in San Antonio for middle school that was completely separate from my registration before the hearing last year and before Mr. Medina filed his answer to that hearing. It had a completely different family number. It had none of my contact information in it.
I'm sorry, again, I'm gonna object as to hearsay document. It's just describing from a document that's hearsay, that's not part of the record.
I agree with that. Objection sustained. Ms. Sheridan, you may proceed.
Thank you. At the ARD meeting, how long did that last?
This was a supplemental ARD meeting just to clarify accommodations. So it only lasted about an hour. The annual meeting was in either late January or early February prior to that. And that one was half a day.
Okay. So which one was it that Mr. Medina declined to discuss any other alternatives at whichever one of those ARD meetings there were?
It was at the second shorter meeting after Joshua had applied himself to the magnet school and been accepted.
Were there any subsequent attempts to visit with Mr. Medina other than at that ARD meeting about choice of school?
Not in person, over email, lots of requests. I would say over 5 or 6.
And after our last hearing, since school was an issue, but it was on temporary orders and not a final hearing, what was your understanding of the expectations Judge Soifer had specifically about the school issue?
The specificity of the school issue was that Mr. Medina was to seriously consider the magnet school and to look into it and have conversations with Joshua and I about where Joshua would like to go to high school, since it was going to be a transition from middle school in either event.
Now, when Mr. Medina allegedly enrolled Josh in a school in San Antonio, were you aware of, did y'all have any discussion about that?
No, I had been attempting to discuss it with him since February of the year before, when I was first made aware that it was a possibility. I did not get any feedback. I asked at least once a month for feedback. I found out that he was registered right after I was received the lawsuit for unilaterally enrolling him, which was the language. And it was, and my oldest child and I discovered that it was Mr. Medina's contact information in the school system, which I do not have access to.
Your Honor, again, I'm going to object. It's a prior objection that was sustained about talking about documents in the school system and not before the court.
Well, but see, what she's saying is she's saying that she looked and couldn't find these records. So I don't know how she can get into it. I mean, she's here under oath. If she can put an affidavit with no record saying she looked and couldn't find. So I'm going to deny this objection. I'm let her go on a little bit more about it, but I am mindful that we don't need her talking about the contents of records without those records and evidence. Okay. All right. Please proceed, Ms. Sheridan.
Can you give, we've pretty much covered your concerns, not only about Joshua's education, but the circumstances of his current environment and that sort of thing. And hopefully Judge Eiserloh will visit with Joshua, since he is over 12, and talk to him about his thoughts and feelings. But could you, in your own words, tell the judge why you feel that this track with him, with us being the beginning of the school year for high school, why it's in his best interest that he be allowed to attend the magnet school, to live with you, and to proceed in San Antonio.
Dad's opinion, in most rebuttals is his opinion is the only one that is valid. That means for the older children, myself and Josh, we don't have opinions of our own that are allowed to be heard. We don't get to decide our own fate. We don't get to be whole people. We are at his mercy and his whim. I have tried as politely as I can on numerous occasions to ask him to just be open to listening, to having a conversation, to do what I'm sure the parenting classes would like us to do. It is difficult to co-parent when you are the only one attempting to co-parent. It is difficult to co-parent when you find out after the fact that attempts that were made to make things equal or in your child's best interest were, in my opinion, sabotaged. So that dad's opinion is the only opinion. I find that extremely abusive. I find it under the grounds of parental alienation. I find the lack of medical care neglectful. And I am not saying this just from the standpoint of a mother. I am saying this from the standpoint of an educator that is under the same laws and ethics that Mr. Medina is in his profession as an educator. These are things that in a classroom for a student that wasn't mine, I would be wary of and would be reporting. And to deny my children their legal accommodations for having disabilities and not being perfect, to refuse to talk to the parent who disagrees with you simply because they disagree, to having falsifications put on record so that I can't access them, I can't correct them, and I have no way of being a parent or an advocate. That's where I think we are. And I mentioned to the court at the very first hearing that these were my fears being married to Mr. Medina for so long, that the abuse that happens, although it's emotional, it's harder to prove. The abuse that happens is lifelong. And it makes it difficult to raise any child.
Given the distance between your two households, how able are you? I mean, we talked about this a little bit. You said all you and your parents and your kids are all, or at least you and your parents are within 5 minutes of where Josh would be attending school and all of that. How available are you as far as being there for the day-to-day needs in San Antonio, getting him to school, getting him to doctor's appointments, even if it means, coming back to Pflugerville to keep the relationship with the doctor or whatever, needs to happen. How available are you to do that?
I'm plenty available. I do have one restriction for having long COVID of not driving more than 2.5 hours straight in a day. And to get from San Antonio to North Austin is about 2 hours. So the older children and I worked out a very good system where one of them will come with me and we will plan events around their school schedule and their work schedule. But they will come with me and we share then other financial resources to help them out. If they can't make it to the store, I'll do grocery runs for them or something like that. So it works out. It's always in my car, so it's not their gas, it's not their car. Mm-hmm. But we have worked it out. We have been doing this for years. There's 30,000 extra miles on my car going back and forth to make sure that my kids know that I am always there. I'm always advocating for them, and they just need to ask, and I can support them. I would like, if the court decides either way, that perhaps the exchange place would be somewhere between the two cities, or always between the two households at a police station, just for the ease of both families being in the car a lot.
So when Joshua is with you, whether it's for, an extended summer or holiday, or even on his weekends, what do you do, if anything, to promote contact and relationship between Joshua and his father?
I have a computer for Josh here. His older siblings set up Discord for their dad, and that is their preferred method of chatting.
A what? I'm sorry.
It's a messaging service called Discord service. I think it came up on the news with someone who used it inappropriately with illegal documents, but it's not intended for that. But that's the way that the four of them prefer to communicate, Mr. Medina and the three kids. So that's set up for him to chat whenever. I provide him a cell phone so he can chat with dad whenever he needs to. Mr. Medina hopefully still has my the house phone number for my parents, which has been the same landline number for over 50 years, has not changed. So there's plenty of ways for him to communicate and check up on him, see how he's doing. I make it a practice of giving Josh a brief phone call before bedtime, kind of as a signal for bedtime, because that helps with autistic kids to have an ADHD, to have a signal at the end of the day. Where basically I just say, hey, do you have a good day? Yes or no. I give him a short blessing and a couple kisses over the phone, and it usually lasts less than 3 minutes. But Mr. Medina is welcome to do it the other way and check on Josh.
All right. Do you think, Judge Eiserloh mentioned earlier about, some of the free co-parenting classes that are offered through Travis County? Do you think that would be helpful at all, or at least not hurtful to participate in that?
I do not think it would be hurtful. I'm a lifelong educator, and the more information that I have about how people learn and get and get along, and does not hurt in one bit. I'm not sure it would be productive in Mr. Medina and my relationship, just given our very long history of not being able to come to agreements. But I don't think it would hurt either of us to learn a couple of skills that maybe we don't have yet.
So basically, I think it's pretty clear from everybody, but you're asking the judge today to name you the person with the exclusive right to determine the residence and of Joshua, as well as at least make educational decisions for him.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you. I pass the witness for now.
Okay, very good. All right, Mr. Turner, do you have some questions for this witness?
Thank you. So, Ms. Schmidt, you testified there at the end about it's difficult to co-parent. He, for years, including during the marriage, was abusive and neglectful. You had mentioned to one of the prior judges about all of this as well. Do you remember that testimony, ma'am?
It's Mick Schmidt, and yes, I do remember that testimony.
Okay, so let's talk about a few examples, if we may, about co-parenting. Prior to the divorce decree in the final hearing, you and Mr. Medina had a 50-50 schedule, correct?
That is correct.
And you asked the court and had a full evidentiary hearing at that time for you to be primary, correct?
Yes, Mr. Turner, before you became Mr. Medina's attorney,
Object, Your Honor, is not responsive after yes.
Yeah, I would say this, Mick Schmidt, it is difficult, but we're not here to ask questions the other attorney. If there's something you want to follow up on, your attorney will ask you those questions, since in all likelihood we'll be taking a lunch break, so you would have an opportunity to talk in the afternoon. All right, Mr. Turner, you may proceed.
Thank you. And would you would not consider that a co-parenting, would you not, to say I no longer want 50-50, but I want to be primary and have an evidentiary hearing, correct?
No, Mr. Turner,
Ma'am?
no.
And the
So,
judge,
Mr. Turner, she's asked, see, there I go. They've asked you something. Could we all of us on this call do a little better with mixed Smith's pronouns, which are they, them, theirs, not ma'am, not miss, not ms.
Okay.
Just
I'm
do,
sure- and
you do your best. I've made a few mistakes too. I've heard Ms.
Right.
Sheridan as well, but this is what this person has asked us to do. And so let's give it every effort to do that. Okay.
and I apologize. I've had 7 years of the others, and so it's just.
I know it.
I
I hear
apologize.
what you're saying, but right
Yeah, I
now,
apologize.
it's a brand, as I've told you before, it's a brand new day.
Right.
I'll do our best, including me. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I will do my best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
And so, and then in 2018, McSmith, you unilaterally signed up the children for a school that was outside of the order, correct?
No,
Well, Your Honor, I'd like the court to take judicial notice of petition respondents exhibit R01, which is the August 2nd, 2018 order.
Well, if you want to put an exhibit in, you're going to need to do that. I'm not going to take judicial notice of anything.
He,
If you want to put it in, I'll take a look at it, but it's not in evidence right now. Do you offer it?
I'm going to offer the August 2nd, 2018 order signed by Judge Strauss.
All right. Any objection to the order?
I just would like if he could publish it in the share screen or something so I could just see that we're referring both to the same thing.
That would be helpful. All right. So now that you put it up, it's a 2-page order, so you might let us kind of scroll down here and see it.
Okay, I don't, other than the highlighted portions, but that's just highlighting it. I don't know that it's any commentary. I don't have any objection.
All right, it's admitted. And let me have just a minute with this, Mr. Turner, just to read it, okay?
I'm sorry, McSmith, in 2018, the Judge Strauss granted enforcement on a school issue that you had instigated and ordered you to pay attorney's fees, correct?
Judge Strauss ordered that my right to enroll the students in a school of my choosing, should Mr. Medina not enroll them in the schools written here in a timely fashion, which was before the end of the school year, were revoked.
Okay, well, let me ask you slightly differently then. Judge Strauss said that Mr. Medina was correct and that you were incorrect, and he ordered you to pay fees, correct?
I'm going to object as to the characterization of being correct or not correct. I think it's clear that she was ordered to pay some fees, but the characterization that Judge Strauss said she was correct or incorrect, I don't think is proper when the order speaks for itself.
I agree. Objection sustained.
Well, I'm asking slightly differently. Judge Strauss said that Mr. Medina's motion for enforcement is in all respects granted and ordered you to pay fees, correct?
Judge Strauss disagreed with Judge Livingston's order as to what timely meant. That was the reason for him ordering this particular order.
So was that another example of you co-parenting with Mr. Medina?
Mr. Medina was ordered by Judge Livingston in the previous order to enroll the children in those schools in a timely fashion. Mr. Medina enrolled the children in those schools several days before the start of the school year. I argued that was not a timely fashion. There was a clause in that previous order that said Mr. Medina did not.
I'm going to object. This is non-responsive. This is just a narrative on. It's non-responsive.
Okay, I don't know that you're getting very far with this, Mr. Turner. I mean, I hear you. She's trying to explain. There's an order. I can see it. So the objection is sustained. I do think she was trying to offer in some more context, which her attorney can bring in, but just be aware, Mr. Turner, there's no jury here. It's just me. So you might want to, get where the getting's good.
Okay, well, I've got one more, if I may.
Uh-huh.
Actually, first, Your Honor, I would offer the July 15th, 2020 final order. That is the order being sought to be modified in this case.
Any objection, Ms. Sheridan?
I don't have one to an actual file stamped copy, and I'm not seeing that this one's file stamped.
Well, it's got judge's signature on it. Do we have any reason to think it's It's inaccurate has been.
I don't know. I would just like, I just generally feel if we're gonna enter orders that we know that they were actually entered and filed. Here I am trying to move the order and I can't do it because it's
Yeah.
not mine to share.
So here's the situation. I'm going to provisionally admit it over the lunch hour. I want you two to confer and make sure that it's exactly the same as the file stamped copy, or exchange it for a file stamped copy. But this is what we have now. It does appear to be signed by Judge Seufer. And so, Mr. Turner, you may proceed. It is admitted with the provision that if it's found to be in any way inaccurate, we'll put the accurate copy in, but you'll need to confirm that over lunch, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, Judge, can I have Mr. Turner state what exhibit number he's offering for the record?
This is R02.
What is it that you want us to look at here, Mr. Turner?
Well, this one,
I'm busy.
I was just going to say, Mr. Schmidt, you're held in contempt. Ms. Schmidt, you're held in contempt, correct?
I can't tell Mr. Turner from what is on my screen right now.
Oh, wait a second, wait, wrong order. Okay. The point of this order is that, Ms. Schmidt, you had asked again that the children were to confer, right?
Yes, and it apparently was granted.
So let's talk a little bit about the Weiss High School. And so if I understand your testimony, you filed a disabilities discrimination claim against them, correct?
The older children and I originally filed it. It is now solely under the discretion of the older children.
Okay. And again, I'm going to object after the older children and I filed it as non-responsive.
I don't understand. You ask her, did you file it? What she's saying is, yeah, but now they're older, so they've reached, it's their own case now. They don't need her anymore. I don't think it was non-responsive, so it's objection is overruled.
May I respond, Your Honor?
If you really want to spend time on this, sure. Yeah, what is your response, Mr. Turner?
Well, my response, Your Honor, is the question simply, did you file? It wasn't, did you file, and who now has the case and what is the current status of the case?
All right, that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, really, if you want to spend time on this, you got some good stuff to dig into, and I don't know quite what we're doing here, but sure. Okay, objection is sustained that she talked about the current status of the case. Please proceed.
Okay, and in that case, when you initially filed, the twins were minors, were they not?
And Judge, I need some context about when this was filed because it may or may not be relevant to a modification since the last order. I just need to know what date we're looking for.
Mr. Turner, do you know the date that we're talking about here, or can you?
I can certainly ask her.
Yeah, let's get going on that then.
Thank you. So when approximately did you and the twins file the disabilities discrimination case?
Pursuant to the OCR website, the case was opened on September the 2nd, 2021.
And in 2021, the twins were seniors at that high school. Is that correct?
Yes, that was correct. They graduated 2022.
Okay. And so you showed your minor children how to file a complaint against their school?
I advocated for my minor children, and my minor children have been in the practice of advocating for themselves for special needs since they were 14, as is educator practice.
The coercion claim that you filed, when approximately was that?
Can you specify what you mean by the coercion claim?
Well, I thought you, in your testimony, you said that there has now been a complaint filed for coercion and for whistleblower.
Yes, that complaint was filed at the request of the older children shortly after their last 504 meeting in the district, where the head of the 504 coordinator position and the lawyer for the school district asked Mr. Medina on video record.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. The question simply was when. That was it.
I agree. That was when. Okay, so we just need answers. You know, I know it's very tempting, Ms. Schmidt, to offer context. Your attorney can get that out. She'll have another chance to actually ask you questions. At this point, we just need to answer Mr. Turner's question. Okay.
Thank you. So, Ms. Schmidt, you filed a coercion complaint, a whistleblower complaint, a disabilities discrimination complaint against this Weiss High School. And you're wondering why they're treating you a little bit kid glovish or skittishly when you communicate with them now?
They're denying my rights, Mr. Turner, which would be more coercion and discrimination. And there is a law that states if you are a whistleblower and file an OCR complaint, they may not in any circumstance do those actions.
So and you have discussed all of this with Josh, correct? You have discussed these complaints with Josh over the last year or so, correct?
No, the meat of the complaints is only between me and the twins.
But you've not said things in front of Josh that he has overheard about all of this? That's your testimony?
Objection as to calling for speculation as to what he may or may not have heard.
Sustained.
So your testimony is you have not discussed this in front of or to Josh?
Josh was living in the house with Mr. Medina during this time. I'm sure that someone in the house might have said something, but Josh is not, in a bubble outside of not hearing things that happen to his family members.
So the Weiss high school, that's the feeder high school from Josh's middle school, correct?
No,
Okay, what is the feeder high school for Josh's middle school?
Hendrickson.
And was there there was an appeal, or there was a transfer request that Mr. Medina made for Hendrickson, correct?
You would need to ask your client.
Okay, but your testimony is that Weiss does not feed from Josh's elementary school, right?
Junior high school.
Thank you. Junior high school, middle school.
No, it is my understanding that Josh's middle school primarily feeds into Hendrickson, but Mr. Medina's neighborhood acquired new high schools, including Weiss, and a new middle school where Josh should have been the feeder school. Josh was allowed to stay at his middle school and his elementary school due to his status as a special education student.
And so, and that segues to the next question. Josh has been in that school district for most of his life, has he not?
He's been within the school district. That isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing.
And you had testified earlier that he has had the same pediatrician for the entirety of his life, correct?
All of the children have since I was pregnant with them.
And it's the same pediatrician that is currently managing Josh's ADHD medicines, right?
Yes, the pediatrician manages prescription medication.
So Josh does not, I think you mentioned something about new things he has to process on his own. So Josh does not handle change well. Would that be a safe statement?
I'm not sure of many children that handle change well. In my experience as a teacher, Josh has special additional requirements with autism. But depending on what the change is, Josh is able to adapt. There are some changes that are more difficult for him than others.
So would you agree with me that a child who is autistic, as is Josh, stability is a huge key? Would you agree with that?
No, I would not, because that is assuming that all autistic people function in the same manner.
So you and Mr. Medina did have a brief text exchange about going to data, did you not?
Mr. Medina.
Or email exchange.
I have had many attempts at emailing Mr. Medina about going to the magnet programs here.
Okay.
More specific, please.
Yeah, Your Honor, at this time, I would offer petitioners 14. I can't imagine there's an objection, it's just their exhibit.
Nope.
Right. No objection. I don't see petitioner 14. I'd like to see it, but it is admitted. Okay, there we go. Okay, petitioner 14 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. So isn't it true, ma'am, that the concern that Mr. Medina has is with your stability as far as Josh moving to San Antonio?
Mr. Medina's definition of stability and my definition of stability are very different.
don't change this. Don't move this page. I'm reading it right now. Okay.
Well, I'm not gonna move it. I'm just gonna highlight a piece
Okay.
of it if I may.
Hang on. Let me just finish reading it.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
thank you. So, isn't it, didn't you testify earlier that you said that Josh is the one who put himself into the lottery and signed himself up and the like?
Yes,
Okay, so at the beginning of this exhibit, District Exhibit 14, you said, I took a chance to see if he would qualify.
Mr. Turner, this is the email exchange from the year before. Joshua signed himself up for the high school a year later because he was upset he was not given a chance to go in middle school.
I'm going to object to that. It was non-responsive.
No, I'm super duper confused. The objection is pending right now. So let me make sure that I understand. Get to the top of this and stop scrolling it for a minute.
Okay, no more scrolling for now.
Okay, all right, so here we go. So this looks like this is a middle school issue that dates back to February of 2022. And it looks to me, I don't know, like that this pertains to a school in Pflugerville. And aren't we here on a school in San Antonio that
No,
would, where that would have all occurred in 2023? This looks like the preceding year. That's all I'm saying.
This is what really kind of prompted the lawsuit, Your Honor. And this was originally it was for the end of his middle school. Because again, this was 2022. The lawsuit was filed a few months after. And so, but the only point is that she signed him up
Okay,
and she entered the lottery. That was really the only point of this. But this is this is the data program in San Antonio. So then when we get down to Mr. Medina's response, he initially says, are you independently with stable employment, right?
Could you scroll back up to the previous one, Mr. Turner?
Well, ma'am, my question, excuse me.
so
I'm sorry,
you're gonna
Nick.
have to do it, Mr. Turner. It is confusing. I am confused. So scroll back up.
Okay,
So we can see the date, like a little bit higher. All right, so now, all right,
Mr. Turner, this was in February of 2022, not for the current school year. And this was something where I attempted just to see if he would qualify. And I asked Mr. Medina, is this something we can discuss as a possibility for next year, please? Joshua was not informed of this in any way, shape, or manner until the following August.
I'm sorry, again, there's no question pending, and this is,
yeah, but I'm confused. Okay, so the data program, I thought that the school in Pflugerville was called Ed White, is it not?
This-
No. Okay, so the data program at Ed White is a program in Bear County.
Yes.
Okay, so this was back over a year ago, really a year and a half ago, year and 7-8 months ago. That what you did is Miss or Mix Schmidt is you took a chance and he got in. And so then that's what prompted this email back in February of 2022. Is that right?
Yes, to see if he would even qualify
Okay.
for the magnet. And
Okay.
then since he did, could we discuss it? It wasn't set in stone. It was just, he qualified and we discuss it.
All right. I was unclear on that, Mr. Turner. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just
Ooh.
couldn't get that straight in my head. So
perfectly fine.
proceed.
Yeah, may I proceed?
Yes.
So Mr. Medina writes back and he first asks, are you living independently with stable employment? Okay, do you see that where it's highlighted?
I do see how he randomly asked me that question.
All right, so here's my question. Are you currently living independently with stable employment?
I am an independent human being. I am alive. I am going to school full time and I am under doctor's care for long COVID.
And you're living with your parents, correct?
I do live in my parents' house. It is a fairly large house due to the cost of housing in Central Texas.
Well, and really all I'm saying though is Mr. Medina's concern about whether or not Josh goes to a different school is really your stability. And he's very, very clear about it in this email, correct?
Mr. Medina makes a lot of accusations in this email. It appears, from my understanding, that in order to be stable, you have to be in a certain geographical location and be teaching at the same, since I'm a teacher, at the same job that you have been since, which would not be the same for Mr. Medina either. So I'm confused by Mr. Medina's definition of, are you stable?
Well, and then Mr. Medina goes on to conclude, please do not discuss this with the children any further. So you had been discussing moves, changes with the children?
No, Mr. Turner, at this point, I had not discussed anything with the children. I was discussing it with Mr. Medina solely.
There we go. So are you still working at Windcrest Elementary?
No, Mr. Turner, I have not worked at Windcrest Elementary since 2020 while I was getting my master's degree. Teachers are able to move schools and still technically have the same job as educator.
Okay, so after you, so in the last order, the 2020 order, you were working at Windcrest, and have you worked at different campuses since then?
Yes,
And which campuses since Windcrest?
I was assigned as a special education specialist at Ed White Middle School for a semester. At that point, I had finished my master's degree, and so then I was assigned within the same school district as a middle school intervention teacher, which had a higher need at the time.
Okay, and where was that?
That was at Eisenhower Middle School.
Okay, so since the 2020 order that is being sought to be modified, you've worked at Windcrest, Ed White, Eisenhower, and now you're in graduate school, correct?
Yes, I think there might be some confusion, Mr. Turner. Educators don't always choose which school they work at. They are assigned by the school district. So
So
when I moved schools, it was at the assignment of the school district as to highest need.
And do you know how many schools Mr. Medina has been assigned to during that same window?
Mr. Medina does not have the number of certifications that I have, so moving him is limited.
Okay, well, that's not my question, so I would object that that's not.
Well, I think there's a good point here that Mix Schmidt is making, which is you're trying to equate apples and oranges here is what they're saying. So I don't know that I find this super persuasive that Mix Schmidt has been moved around quite a bit. Is that Northeast School District?
Yes, all of those schools are in Northeast School District, and for each one, it was right after COVID, so it was during teacher turnover. So I was moved in places of highest need, and then my years at Eisenhower were based on House Bill 4545
Okay,
and my credentials for that.
okay, all right. You may proceed, Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Your Honor. And so when you moved to San Antonio in 2019 or 2020, at that same time period, a house you owned with your parents in the North Austin, Hutto, Pflugerville area was foreclosed upon, correct?
When I went through some pretty serious medical complications, it was difficult to hold down a job and make payments. Cancer does that, unfortunately. No matter how much medical insurance you have.
So it was foreclosed upon, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and you and your parents filed a lawsuit in federal court against the lender, did you not?
Yes, the paperwork that they filed.
I'm just going to object at this point as to relevance, as to what her and her parents, situation with suing a lender has to do with this right now.
I am concerned about that, Mr. Turner. The objection is sustained.
Do I not get to, can I respond for the record?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. The point of all of this is that Ms. Schmidt is very litigious, and she's filed or prompted to be filed multiple lawsuits in this divorce proceeding and post-divorce proceedings. She's filed and enlisted her minor children in filing complaints against their school. And she has filed, Ms. Schmidt has filed multiple complaints against the school. And and likewise, it is now also filing, or they did file suit against the lender. Part of Mr. Medina's email, P14, was about victim mentality. And so that's the purpose of all of this.
Ms. Sheridan?
I still am failing to see the relevance. I see why Mr. Turner maybe wants to bring some of this in, but as far as the modification, what the current circumstances are and all of that, and especially with her parents, I don't understand. I'm just having a hard time connecting the dots.
I could leave the parents out and just say she filed a suit.
That's not true.
Well, okay, guys, so here's the situation. really, I mean, I can see those little lawsuits or the complaints that were against Pflugerville School. I can see those, and certainly, didn't need to connect the dots, which you did anyway, Mr. Turner, that they're going to be treating them with kid gloves. What this Linder lawsuit, I don't know. Honestly, guys, I don't think this makes a bit of difference one way or the other. But Mr. Turner, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go on and overrule the objection. You can go into it, but you got to understand, judge is not really. I mean, if you had a jury, maybe somebody on there who, is real jazzed up about it. But I don't know. The parents' lawsuit, her lawsuit pertaining to a foreclosure on a home in Pflugerville. I don't know. Maybe.
That was the extent of the questioning on it.
All right.
So, Ms. Schmidt, you had testified that Mr. Medina did not tell you of any medical visits prior to taking the children, correct?
Could you give me a timeline, please, sir?
Well, I think that you had a portion of your testimony a little while ago in which you testified that you never find out any information from Mr. Medina, including when do they have doctor visits. And Ms. Sheridan asked you a question about that, and I think you responded, wouldn't it be nice to have that information? Do you remember all that?
I remember stating that I don't hear from Mr. Medina directly until after it's already happened.
So wouldn't that be the same, Ms. Schmidt, for when you were taking the children to the doctor?
No, Mr. Turner, whenever I took the children to the doctor, I notified Mr. Medina of the date and why we were going, and then I would give him the synopsis afterwards.
Have you ever testified any differently?
Not that I can recall, sir.
So do you remember when your deposition was taken earlier in this case, and Ms. Sheridan was there and I was there?
That was over a year ago, sir, so no, it's not fresh on my memory.
Well, at that time in your deposition on page 20, line 19, I said, did you and Mr. Medina discuss the COVID shot? And you said no. And then I said, did you and Mr. Medina discuss the boosters, the required immunization for 7th graders? And you said no. Now, what leads up to this is when you said, I took care of Joshua's medical needs.
Mhm.
And then I also asked you, did you discuss, and you'd taken the children to eye doctors and to dental visits? And I said, did you discuss the eye doctor visits or dental visits with Mr. Medina prior to taking Josh? And you said no.
And I'm going to object to the characterization of that and request optional completeness for the rest of that statement.
All right, and the rule of optional completeness has been requested, so we're going to go in and allow the remainder of it to come in now. Ms. Sheridan, what was the other part of it that you wanted to read?
Just on line 11, the rest of that response to, did you discuss the eye doctor visits or dentist visits with Mr. Medina prior to taking Josh?
Okay.
And I'm objecting that was non-responsive to the question. The question was, did you take them? Did you discuss it, and not why or why not?
I think this is it leads to implications that were not intended, because the answer that she had was explaining her actions.
Okay.
In fact, I objected on the depositions as to the same.
Non-responsive at the time. Yeah. I mean, so I think that Mr. Turner's point here is that there have been times when she hasn't conferred with Mr. Medina before taking Josh to the doctor and getting some treatments for him, like eye doctor or COVID shots, right? Is that the point, Mr. Turner?
It's kind of a goose and gander, Your Honor. You're correct.
Okay. All right, then I think we probably spent enough time on this deposition.
So if I may look at my notes for a moment, because I may be finished.
Okay, let's give you a minute. Maybe we can let you finish up before lunch so you can relax some over the lunch hour.
Thank you.
And now, Ms. Sheridan, if you have any additional questions for your client, you may proceed.
I will. Thank you, Judge. Ms. Schmidt, I want to talk to you just about a few of the things that Mr. Turner talked to you about on his cross-examination. With respect to the ability to co-parent with Mr. Medina, he mentioned that you had made this complaint in the past and are continuing to make it. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Has it improved at all since you made your first complaint about the inability to co-parent?
No, I'd say it's gotten worse over time.
All right. As far as Joshua's pediatricians are concerned, Do you have any issues concerning his current doctors?
No, I think they're excellent.
Okay. Do you have any problems if the judge were to allow Joshua to attend the school in San Antonio, particularly the special magnet school, at some point? Given that you're in San Antonio, would you have any problems making sure that there was no disruption in physician care for Joshua with his current pediatricians?
No, I would definitely, unless Josh had an opposition to it, still keep him with the same medical providers and the same psychologist as well. The psychologist is able to do Zoom sessions. So Josh could go separately into his room and talk to his therapist that way. That would help.
All right. Now, one of the things I'm going to ask you, I know that what we've pleaded for is for you to have the exclusive right to determine Joshua's residence and make major decisions for him, primarily in the educational realm. But there are a lot of things that the judge can do on her own, that she might want to do or test out or whatever. Do you understand that in one scenario, the judge could allow Joshua to attend school there, but really not change anything about the conservatorship or other aspects of the order?
I'm sorry, I'm going to object that is actually, that one's leading.
Yeah, I'd agree. That was some leading there. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay.
There, Sheridan, if you have some, additional ideas for the court, that might be something that we get into a little bit later about that.
Okay. All right. Do you recall the email? And honestly, Judge, and I might have to ask Ms. Gonzalez, but the email, my petitioners 14, I can't recall if it was actually admitted or not. I know I said I had no objection, but I don't know if it was actually admitted.
Ms. Gonzalez, did we admit petitioner 14?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. Sounds like you're in good shape, Ms. Sheridan.
Okay. All right. Because I want to pull that up.
Okay.
Let's see. Go back to share screen. So, pardon me. Would you read the first, like the hey Matt, but then after that, the first two lines?
Hey, Matt, I took a chance at trying to see if Josh would qualify for the magnet program for data at Ed White since he wants to pursue this field. Here's their website.
Okay. And then going down to the bottom, can you read the sentence that is starting with is?
Is this something we can discuss as a possibility for next year?
Okay. And how did you sign it?
Thanks, Amber.
All right. Now I'm going to move down a little bit. And to your recollection, is this March 1st, 2022 at 1:14 p.m. email from Mr. Medina the first response you got to your February 28th email?
Yes, it is.
Okay. On the same subject.
Yes.
Okay. And I will ask you to read the first line of Mr. Medina's response.
Amber, you are not allowed to make these decisions without speaking with me.
Okay. What is in the next sentence?
You should know this.
All right. At any point after this exchange, did you and Mr. Medina have any reasonable discussions about Joshua attending the school?
Not reasonable, no.
That's all I think I have, Judge. I'll pass the witness.
All right. Very good. Mr. Turner, do you have any additional questions for this witness?
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
No, Your Honor, I do not have any further questions for this witness.
All right, Ms. Schmidt, we've come to the end of the testimony that the attorneys are asking from you in this trial. So you may figuratively step down from the Zoom witness stand. Ms. Sheridan, call your next witness.
Judge, actually, other than maybe needing Ms. Schmidt for any rebuttal testimony after Mr. Medina and subject to your hopefully visiting with Joshua at some point, I think we will rest subject to rebuttal.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. So, Mr. Turner, it's your opportunity.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, we would call Matt Medina. Mr. Medina, where do you currently work?
At Weiss High School in Pflugerville ISD.
And how long have you worked at Weiss High School?
I transferred over there in the 2018-19 school year, so this is my 5th year.
What certifications do you have at Weiss High School?
I'm certified through the Texas Education Agency for 4th through 12th grade ELA, and I'm also additionally certified for ESL, GT, and special education.
So do you have the same certifications as does Mick Schmidt?
No, I don't believe so.
Are there any differences in what you believe you have and what Mick Schmidt has?
Not aware if they're certified for GT or for ESL, and definitely not the same English language classes since they originally taught math.
So you actually have more certifications than does Mick Schmidt?
I think that's correct.
So the testimony you heard previously that Mick Schmidt gave as far as the transfers from campus to campus, is that your understanding how that works?
It's not, as for almost 20 years in education, people usually stay in the same positions and especially the same schools. There has to be some pretty special circumstances for people to be moved to different schools, especially repeatedly year after year. That's not normal from my observation.
And what actual roles do you have at your school?
I'm the English Language Arts Advanced English teacher. So I teach AP courses, college level courses. I also am the grade level English 4 PLC lead. So I'm in charge of English 4 for the entire campus. I'm also an advanced academics coordinator, since I'm the only advanced academics ELA teacher at that level. I'm in charge of one other teacher. But I'm also an advocate and co-sponsor for several clubs and organizations. But I'm also the special programs coordinator for GT and dyslexia.
Okay, do you have any roles or duties as relates to autistic children at Weiss?
Yeah, as part of the GT and dyslexia special programs coordinator, I oversee when students are nominated for potential testing or response to intervention for students that have a suspected learning disability or some other form of advanced academics or neurodivergence or things like that. And so I help make sure that they get tested and evaluated properly so that they can get the right accommodations that they need based on their results.
So based on your role and your involvement with autistic and special needs children at Weiss, do you have an understanding of what the policy there at Weiss is in regards to accommodations and advanced courses?
Yes, I do.
And what is that understanding?
Students who earn and they have qualifying conditions that are decided upon committee are entitled to and receive accommodations and accessibility supports when necessary in order to provide a free and appropriate access to the content and curriculum. There are no restrictions for the accommodations or SPED support or 504 in any academic courses, advanced or otherwise. And the students are also allowed to have access to the same approved accommodations once they're approved through the College Board and for AP testing and advanced testing, provided that there's documentation provided by the school after they've been approved for those same accommodations at the school.
So the testimony that Mick Schmidt gave earlier that Josh could not do both AP because he couldn't do AP because of his special needs, he would not get the accommodations. Was that a true statement or was that a false statement?
That is not accurate or true.
So the twins, we've heard testimony, also went to Weiss, correct?
That's correct.
Did they flunk and get denied scholarships?
They did not flunk, and as far as I know, they did receive scholarships.
And they are attending one of the schools in the University of Texas system, correct?
Yeah, based on their end of the year transcript at Weiss, Peter was accepted into UT provisionally, and then he was accepted automatically into UTSA, and Tina was accepted provisionally into UTSA with their grades and qualifications.
So was there any time that you registered Josh at data in San Antonio?
None whatsoever.
And you heard testimony about that this morning, correct?
Yes, for the second time.
What actually happened there?
I found out through indirect notifications from the school that Josh was registered. I began to receive parental emails as if I was a parent of an enrolled student.
And I'm going to object to any reference to out-of-court documents that may contain hearsay.
Well, I don't think he's talking about his experience of them, that he got these.
Okay.
It's borderline. I hear what you're saying, but at this point, I'm gonna overrule the objection. Mr. Medina or Mr. Turner, please proceed. Mr. Medina.
Based on the conversation with Mick Schmidt regarding Josh's lottery or enrollment or whatever the circumstances were, I contacted the school to verify if he was in fact enrolled. They told me that he was enrolled, and I requested to be put down as a parent so that I could receive information. So that is the extent of my involvement with them, is to make sure that my name was on whatever enrollment records were in there, but I didn't provide or register any enrollment records with them.
And did you at any time do your own independent investigation of data or the magnet school that we're here about today?
Yes, I did.
And what is it that you found out?
I'm going to object to, excuse me, I'm going to object on the basis that this is going to clearly be based on hearsay.
Well, Mick Schmidt testified at length about all of the what the school was and school wasn't. And I do believe he should have the opportunity to do the same.
I do think the door is open at this point, Ms. Sheridan. So Mr. Medina, you may proceed.
Okay, in addition to the school being located in proximity to Mick Schmidt's parents' house and in the district where she was currently working, it does provide opportunities for robotics and engineering and STEM opportunities that are more specifically guided towards STEM fields.
Did you come away with an understanding as to whether this data program is geared towards autistic children?
This program is not geared or designed for autistic children.
And of robotics, engineering, and STEM, which of those, if any, are in Josh's fields of interest?
Well, the first two initials in STEM are science and technology, and Josh does like the coding aspect of video games, but he likes the design aspects of creating worlds and maps, and he hasn't expressed interest in robotics or engineering apart from the way that engineering is similar to designing games and coding games, but not specifically like mechanical or computer engineering or anything like that, or definitely not robotics, because I've actually gotten some toys like that before and he's kind of panned them.
So is Josh currently enrolled in a coding class at Weiss?
Yes, and yes, that's correct.
Is it a specific coding course?
Very much so. Just to add a little bit of extra information, he had a schedule change recently because the coding class that he had, there were 3 levels, and that teacher noticed that none of the levels were appropriate for him, and they upgraded him to an advanced computer coding class that's more appropriate for his level.
Well, let me change gears slightly. Where do you currently live?
In Pflugerville, Texas.
And what's the address? Thank you, Judge. Let me just ask it this way. Have you lived in the same, how long have you lived in the same, at the same address?
Since the separation in fall of 2015.
So 8 years.
Yes.
And you own or rent?
Own.
So as far as Josh and his day-to-day at your home, which has been virtually every week for the last 3 years, what kind of safeguards and the like do you have for him?
When he was still attending middle school, he would get home before I did, but I made sure that I had the end of the period conferences so that I could make it home if I needed to, and often was home when he was home and working from home with the understanding from the people that I worked with. And then this year, once he started at Weiss, that's no longer an issue because he'd leave the same time as me. But I pretty much told him that he'll get home before I will if he takes the bus. If he wants to wait and go home with me, which he's needed to a couple of times for various circumstances, then it's going to take a little bit longer. But I live 5 minutes away.
Please, just
Okay. Mr. Medina, here's our situation. We have a court reporter here.
Understood. Oh, I'm
Every
sorry.
word you're saying. You were you weren't going too fast, but when that
I forgot. I have to remember. I will be more conscientious of that. I apologize. Where would you like me to resume or begin again?
Miss Gonzalez, I think it started with when he was talking about what happened when Josh started going to Weiss.
yes.
Is that right? I think that's when he sped up. So, Mr. Medina, where you talk about how when he started going to Weiss, you told him.
I was telling him that it would be quicker for him to get home if he takes the bus.
That's right. Okay, keep going.
And then if he needs to, if he wants to stay after school for a club event, or if he happens to miss the bus or something like that, then he just walks upstairs to my classroom and we'll get home about 20 minutes later than he normally would if he was taking the bus. So he takes the bus almost always. He's only not taken the bus twice since we started. And then at my house, I have a camera in the kitchen and I have a camera in the doorbell, and there is a coded entry, and he has the code for that, as well as a backup key that he can use to get into the front door or the back door. We also have neighbors that live directly behind us who I've worked with for years, and their students attend the same school, and I've taught their students prior to, currently, and will in the future as well. And he's ridden the bus with those students, and we're on the paperwork for the school to be able to appropriately be each other's emergency contacts and provide care if necessary during emergency situations. They have permission to pick them up and communicate with them and everything like that. And he knows to go there if there's an extreme emergency, but there hasn't ever been anything like that, thank goodness.
Is there any sort of procedure as far as strangers, or if he's locked out for Josh?
Fortunately, that hasn't been necessary, but we have a code word that he could give to someone if necessary, and he's aware of what that is. But I also try and make sure he knows people that he can trust, people who I work with and things like that. So
does Josh know, you mentioned one, does Josh know any of the other neighbors?
We have next door neighbors, but mostly just the behind neighbors because the rest of the neighbors are the children that are younger. So he doesn't know them because they're still elementary aged, but the students that are his age, he knows. The ones that he rides the bus with and stuff.
And there are other children, it sounds like, his age on the bus route.
That's correct.
Do you have any concerns as an educator about Weiss High School accommodating Josh's needs?
None whatsoever.
Do you believe that Weiss High School is a good fit for Josh?
Yes.
So Josh has been in for, when did school start?
August 18th.
So they've been in about 5 weeks or so.
Yes, this is our 6th week. We just finished up.
And how has does Josh seem to like school?
Yeah, he's started hanging around with friends. I happen to have access to him during pepper rallies, which he doesn't attend, so I can see him hanging out in the cafeteria with specific individuals from some of his classes. He's reconnected with students from his previous middle school because it actually feeds into Weiss High School, which was something that was stated incorrectly earlier. So he has people that he has been with in school for over 5 years that still know him and recognize him from all the schools that he's been attending over the past few years.
So is Josh taking any advanced classes? You mentioned something about the coding, but are there any actual AP or pre-AP classes that he's taking?
We've had conversations about it. He belongs in pre-AP classes for everything. Unfortunately, he's not, other than the computer class. I believe that's a mistake for him.
Is there a reason that you understand why he's not?
It's very clear that what his mother thinks influences the decisions, but on a more concrete level, whenever there is course selections, as there have been every year, his mother takes over that and insists on the course selection sheets that he does not take advanced courses. And then when we have our 504 meetings, she also insists in there with the same justification being because there's discrimination for advanced coursework and special education students.
So has there been a 504 meeting during this current school year?
No, there has not.
Has there been a parent-teacher conference this school year?
No, there has not.
So there has been no information of that kind for you to have sent to Ms. Schmidt, correct?
No, not yet.
And so there was a complaint that Ms. Schmidt had filed, a discrimination complaint against Weiss. Were there any specific teachers that were named in that?
Yes, there were.
And can you name any of them?
One of the teachers that's still currently employed there is Nicholas Spinato.
Okay, so Mr. Spinato, does he teach your son Josh any class?
Yes, he currently has him in his engineering class.
And the basis of the complaint was discrimination as to this individual and your older children, correct?
Yes.
And what is Josh's grade so far in Mr. Spinato's class?
We just finished an initial reporting period and he has an 88.
And so where are current exchanges, pick up and drop off?
Currently at the Pflugerville Police Department.
And how long have those, how long has the pickup and drop off been at the Pflugerville PD?
I want to say since at least 2016, it was decided shortly after the divorce and the custody exchanges first began.
Okay. Is there a particular, do you feel like they need to stay there?
Yes.
And why is that?
To make sure that I'm safe and there is backup documentation for the exchanges due to an altercation that transpired during one of the original exchanges at another location.
And do you believe it is in Josh's best interest to stay at Weiss and remain with you?
I do.
And what are your concerns, if any, if Josh is to move to San Antonio and move in with his mother?
I don't believe that the stability that he needs and the support that he's consistently received from the caregivers, the welfare providers, and myself, talking school academically, and then myself as well, is the same quality and consistency that it would be if he moved.
I'll pass the witness. Thank you, sir.
All right, very good. Ms. Sheridan, do you have any questions for Mr. Medina?
I may have a few, Judge.
All right.
Now, one of the things that Mr. Turner asked you about on direct examination was about Mick Schmidt being assigned and the differences of your opinions about whether or not that's the way things work as a teacher getting assigned that in your experience, people stay for a long time unless there are special circumstances. That's what I put down in quotes, special circumstances. Do you remember testifying in that regard?
Yes.
All right. And you heard Ms. McSmith state that her assignments really did not start occurring until after the COVID pandemic hit.
I
Right.
don't remember that distinction in her testimony, but what's the question?
Well, my question is going to be is, would you consider the COVID pandemic to be a special circumstance?
Universally applicable by some definitions of a special circumstance, but I've not seen as much mobility from everyone else. So there's kind of an exclusive special circumstance as it applies to her, because despite the pandemic, I haven't seen the kind of mobility that she's described anywhere else but with her.
But not all teachers have the same credentials and certifications that she does that might need to be placed depending on the circumstances.
Most teachers do hold additional certifications. I've also not seen certifications be a huge contributing factor to that much mobility.
Okay, that's in your experience, but you understand Nick Schmidt has a different perception of what her situation is.
I certainly do.
Objection, argumentative.
Well, I thought it was pretty mild, honestly, Mr. Turner. It's overruled. Please proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Did you, while I understand that your testimony is that you did not ever register Joshua for the data program in San Antonio, did you ever register him for any school in San Antonio?
No, I did not.
Not at any time?
Not at any time.
Okay. Now, you testified on direct examination that based on your understanding that the data program is not geared or designed for autism.
For autistic students, correct.
All right. But generally speaking, in general classes, that those aren't geared necessarily towards autism or someone on the autism spectrum, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That's why we have, things like ARD and special accommodations for students who may need a little extra attention in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to answer yes or no. So.
Yes, I apologize. Yes.
Okay. Now, the home that you've lived in Pflugerville for however many years, you said essentially since your separation around 2016 or so, or 2015, is that your recollection? Yeah. All right. And how many places is your understanding that Mick Schmidt has lived since your separation?
In the initial separation, we were cohabitating in a townhome, so that's one. And then after that, I'm not certain if there was anywhere in the middle before moving to a location in Hutto, and that address is on several documents and records. And then in 2018, that summer, she moved to San Antonio. I was made to understand that that would be a temporary arrangement because we had not met in court or had any decisions that would significantly alter our custody agreement or the circumstances of the separation. But then right at the beginning, within less than a month's time of starting the sophomore school year for the twins, that would be in 2018-19, I was informed that she was not going to be moving back to San Antonio, and she was now residing in San Antonio with her parents.
She was not going to. So I'm not understanding.
She was not going to be moving back to Pflugerville or Austin or anywhere in the area, and she was now residing with her parents. So that's the third location as far as I know.
Okay. So if I'm understanding your testimony correctly, then you have lived in 2 different places since the separation, and she may have lived in 3.
I moved from the place where we were cohabitating to my current location. So that's the first and only place I've been since then. She continued to reside in the place where we were cohabitating, being, okay, I guess if you want to count it, the first as well. Otherwise, it was the place she was living when we first separated, then followed by another location and then another location. So I count 3, but you can count it as 2 if you want.
Okay. And I wanted to count because, again, there's a reason I became a lawyer and not a mathematician. But if I am counting correctly, if you count where you were at the time of separation and your new home, that's at least 2 places you've lived since then, correct?
Well, yeah, but if we're counting since the separation, then I didn't live there. Since the separation, I've lived here. Since the separation, she resided there, then moved, and then moved again.
What year did you purchase the home?
I want to say 2020.
Okay, so that's about 3 or so years after the separation.
Correct.
Okay. And you purchased that home from your father?
Yes.
Now, you were talking about steps you had taken for safety for Joshua. And one of the things you talked about on direct were local emergency contacts and the links you'd gone to make sure that he had someone locally to call. Is that right?
Yes.
Interestingly, I do not recall you mentioning Mick Schmidt as an emergency contact in that testimony.
I believe mother would probably trump the emergency contact, and the fields that are provided for the contact information with student registration have separate designations. So it kind of would be odd or unorthodox to have mother as emergency contact unless the circumstances allow for it. You've got parents and emergency contacts in separate fields. So I would not think to put her down as an emergency contact since she is under the field, or rather they are under the field of mother on his contact information. Also, I don't provide or alter any of the information on Josh's contact information regarding her or anything like that.
I'm going to pull up again E14. And before I do so, I will ask you in the decree and that's the main order. Number one, one of the geographic restrictions that was imposed initially was to included Bexar County as a place where his residence could be established. Is that true?
I believe during one of the orders that's true. Yes.
Okay. And are you aware of any orders that change that from Pflugerville and Bexar County?
No.
Okay. And in that same order, the decree of divorce, it requires that you, after consultation with Mick Schmidt, that you would, that you could then have certain exclusive rights. Is that right?
Under consultation regarding which specific?
Well, let me go
Decisions.
back. Yes, ma'am. And I meant to mention, I talked to Mr. Turner offline, and I had found my file stamped copy, and I did compare it to the one that he had that was not file stamped, and they are the same. So I don't, whether you want to introduce mine, P23, since it's got a file stamp, or his, it doesn't matter to me. And I'm going to read this just so it's on the record, but you correct me if I don't read it correctly. You see where it says exclusive rights of Matthew E. Medina?
Yes.
All right. And it is ordered that Matthew E. Medina, as a joint managing conservator, shall have the following exclusive rights after meaningful consultation with mother and children. Meaningful consultation shall mean that prior to making of one of the below enumerated decisions, Matthew E. Medina shall first consult with mother and with the children and make a good faith effort to reach an agreement. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
All right. And then another one of the rights that you have is the right to determine the child's or children's primary residence within the Pflugerville Independent School District or Bexar County.
Is that a question?
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to stop the share now. Now I am going to go to that email. All right. And is her email to you dated February 24th, 2022 at approximately 5:16 p.m.?
It says 28th, but
Sorry.
so then it's dated February 28th, 2022.
Okay, thank you. And you heard her testify previously that she indicated that on that date, she emailed you and said she took a chance to see if Josh would qualify for the magnet program at Ed White since he wants to pursue this field, right?
Yes, that's what the email says.
Okay. And then in the last line of her email to you before she, her salutation is this something we can discuss as a possibility for the next year, please? Thanks, Amber. Correct?
Correct.
All right. Would you agree with me that that's at least some effort at a consultation with you about this issue?
Not entirely, because this decision, any actions that precede this email did not have any meaningful consultation whatsoever. In addition, whatever.
I'm gonna object.
Yeah.
I'm going to object as to non-responsive. My question, Mr. Medina, is that at least in this circumstance, this line where she asks, is this something we can discuss as a possibility for next year, please? Would you agree with me that at least that is an effort to try to discuss the issue with you?
Going forward from not, yes.
Okay. I'm going to object to the part of his response prior to not.
Well, then in that case, no, I don't believe it is.
Yeah, I don't know that he is being unresponsive, actually. But anyway, please proceed.
Sure. Now, I don't know if this was a leap year or not. So it may be that this was a response from you within 1 or 2 days after hers, because I just don't know if February was a leap year that year or not. Your response on March 1st, 2022, Amber, you are not allowed to make these decisions without speaking with me, right?
Yes.
You should know this, right?
Yes.
In the second paragraph, your statement, make sure if I get this right, you asked, because you'd been talking about her circumstances, have those circumstances changed? Question mark, right?
Yes.
Are you living independently with stable employment? Right?
Yes.
Okay. Moving down, do you see where it starts with you?
Yes.
Okay. And it states you are not authorized to apply or register Josh for any schools or make any important decisions without consulting me. Is that right?
Yes.
Josh will attend CMS next year with his classmates and special ed tracking team.
Yes.
Okay. Anywhere in that paragraph where you mention setting up a time to visit with her more about this situation?
No.
Here. Now, on direct examination, you made some comments in response to some of Mr. Turner's questions. You said Joshua has been in school since, you say August 15th or August something. I didn't write down the actual date.
The first day of school was Tuesday, August 15th.
Okay. And do you recall that we were originally scheduled to come to work on this final hearing prior to that date?
On that date.
Okay. You believe it was on the 15th and rather the 14th?
Or the 14th, but it was a 2-day hearing, so on and about that date.
Okay. All right. And through no fault of anyone's, we understood that if Mr. Turner's jury trial went, we would have to reset. And that's what happened, was it not?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Now, would you also agree with me that it is important for both parents to be able to participate in a child's life, which would include their school activities and things of that nature?
I would need more specification on participation and what activities.
Okay, just for a general statement about whether or not it's generally a good idea for both parents to participate in that?
Under general circumstances, it would be, yes.
Okay. Important for parents to hopefully be involved in their children's lives?
It would depend on how you define involved.
Okay. So you mentioned that there was no ARD or there were no ARDs or conferences in this first 6 weeks that involved Joshua.
That's correct.
So I believe your words were something to the effect, so you can't inform her about things that haven't been scheduled or occurred.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, my recollection of your testimony was that there were no ARD or parent-teacher conferences, so you couldn't give her information about something that hadn't happened yet.
Right.
Okay. But you have had the swim team calendar, have you not?
No,
So you don't even know when the swim meets are?
not yet.
Okay. In looking at the situation over the last year or so, one of the points that Mr. Turner made through your testimony was the fact that Joshua had lived in Pflugerville and attended these schools as a young person for the majority of his life. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And he has some friends, even though we've all established that, you know, he might be a little awkward socially, but otherwise he does have friends. He's very bright, succeeds in school, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a bit of a hypothetical, but if a child expressed a desire to change schools, even after this long history, wouldn't that be something that might be significant?
I'm more object that would be speculation. That's speculation by its very definition.
Oh. Well, yeah, I think it is I think it is speculation. I'm going to sustain it. However, you know, we're talking to someone who's a dad and an educator here. I think if she can kind of lay a little bit more of a predicate than she did, she might be able to get into it. But, you know, I mean, it's like everything else here. It's Obviously, I'm the only one listening to this, so.
Right. Well, and I think I've made my point, Judge, and I can certainly make it an argument too.
Yeah. I agree.
I think that's all I have at this time, other than based on his direct, I will advise the court, I do have just a little bit of rebuttal.
All right, very good. All right, Mr. Turner, what else?
I just have a couple of questions left on P14 for Mr. Medina, a couple of follow-up questions. So,
Okay.
Mr. Medina, at the top, we already established this was sent to you on February 28th at 5:16. I'm going to represent to you that according to Mr. Google, February of 2022 was not a leap year.
The very next email says Tuesday and the previous email says Monday. So it looks like it's the very next day based on the calendar in the email.
So you were much more efficient than is Mr. Google. So I had to go look it up, or more efficient than
Unless there was an extra day of the week, I believe it's the following day.
So when we get to your response, you initially start off, Amber, you are not allowed to make these decisions without speaking with me. You should know this. Why do you say that?
There's documentation which she's signed and been ordered by the judge dictating that specific information.
So has there been any prior history of Ms. Schmidt making unilateral educational decisions?
Yes.
Did any of those result in a finding of an enforcement and awarding you fees?
Yes.
And so then the next thing you say is, I do not appreciate you traumatizing Josh with circumstances beyond his control and discussing important parental decisions with the children before speaking with me. Does Josh handle these types of stressors well, given his disabilities?
Unfortunately, no.
And so then you say in the future, please contact me before attempting to enroll, etc. So, and then you again, at the end of this, say, please do not discuss this with the children any further, as it is causing them visible anxiety, especially Josh. So did you observe visible anxiety with Josh because of this?
Yes.
So one thing about you being at Weiss and Josh being at Weiss, do you see benefits to Josh of you actually being at the same campus?
Definitely.
What are those?
Proximity, immediate access in the event of any circumstances, direct communication possibilities with his teachers and his caseworker. And then in addition, the proximity of the home to the campus that we're both attending.
Have any of those potential circumstances come to fruition in this current school year?
Yes, they have.
And which?
He's forgotten his ID, his lunch, and in one case, after his first swim team rehearsal, his underwear, or his first swim team practice, his underwear.
And were you able to help him to sort these out and to handle these better?
Yeah, 10 minutes round trip, go and get the ID, the lunch, whatever it takes.
So I will pass the witness, nothing further. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Sheridan, do you have anything else for Mr. Medina?
Just a few things. Let me pull back up 14. Now, in the portions of your email, Mr. Medina, that you were asked about, and you state that obviously some discouragement about how this has transpired, but you talked about it's causing them further visible anxiety, especially Josh. Is that right?
The further was referring to the discussion, but the visible anxiety was the initial, yes.
Right. And this is allegedly what you're observing, but not necessarily anybody else's insight or perception of this.
I can't speak to that. Anybody else?
Okay. Now, you don't deny that Joshua has expressed desires to attend the school, correct?
I don't. Can you rephrase the question?
How about just did you, rather than you don't deny? How about just did
Right.
you?
Did I? I'm sorry. Did I hear Josh's expressing interest in that school? Yes.
Yes. And would you agree with me if there's discord between the parents on being able to make a decision that could also trigger anxiety?
When are you asking me if when his mother and I communicate, does that trigger anxiety?
No, just on this particular issue. That if two parents can't agree, say on the charter school, that could create anxiety, particularly someone who's more susceptible to it, like Joshua.
If he's involved in the conversation or privy to the information, then it would cause him anxiety because of the conflict.
Okay. I don't believe I have any more questions of this witness.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sheridan. Mr. Turner?
No, ma'am, thank you.
All right, I have a question for you, Mr. Medina, just to make sure I understand. When this email was sent out on February the 28th of 2022, you said, I just want to confirm, when was it that you first found out that Josh was actually enrolled in the school? This looks like more of a, hey, he got in. When did you find out that he was actually enrolled?
This email was my first notification that his information was provided for any kind of program.
Okay, but when did you said you got some sort of emails from the school, kind of a, like he was an enrolled student. When did you get that?
That wouldn't be until, I think later on during the summer.
Okay, so this was in March or February when this exchange happened.
Right.
But you found out in the summer that it was more of an interest, more than just an interest expressed in this student or the school, that it was actually, Josh was enrolled in the school in San Antonio. Is that right?
I really wasn't ever able to make the distinction on what the lottery component was in distinction or difference to him actually being enrolled. From my understanding, they were tantamount to the same thing, because it seemed like the communications I received were concurrent with someone who was enrolled or registered to the same capacity as enrollment and acceptance.
And you started getting those emails from the school in the summer?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. Okay, Mr. Turner, do you have any additional witnesses? Or if not, we might take a little break, because we're going to go on a 3 o'clock break. So.
Other than fees, and I would kindly ask Ms. Sheridan perhaps to do the stop share.
Oh, sorry. I just didn't
Right.
bring it down because the judge was still looking at it. So.
Thank you. Other than we have just nominal evidence on our fees, and that's it.
All right. Let's. What are you thinking? You think we can get through that in about 10 minutes and then take a break at 3?
I think 3 or 4.
Okay. Well, we have an afternoon break coming. Is the only reason I ask, guys. I think let's go on and do this. Let's go on and take our break now, so my court reporter can have a little bit of a rest. Then we'll take up Mr. Turner's fees and anything else Ms. Sheridan has on rebuttal. 82. I had the great privilege of speaking with a very, very intelligent young man, Mr. Josh, who we talked to, and getting his views. I will say I'm going to make the following rulings in this case. The request for attorney's fees are denied. The petition to modify as set forth by mother is denied. So Dad had the petition for attorney's fees. That's denied. The modify is denied. I would like the following orders, however, to be in the upcoming order: that the parents will take Travis County's co-parenting class through Domestic Relations Office. It is free. I do think that these parents can co-parent more effectively than they currently are. I did also would like a provision in the order so that the child's current high school, which is Weiss, knows for sure that Ms. Schmidt is entitled to information from them. I do find that father has provided a safe and supportive home for the child, and that his current high school is certainly very good. I do find that mother, Mix Schmidt, has really hit upon some issues for this child, which is that he is very, very intelligent, particularly in the areas of mathematics, and he does need more programming. Therefore, I do order the parents to engage in fruitful, productive, and realistic discussion about how this child's mathematical interest can be addressed while he is in high school, whether that be through Weiss High School or transfer to Henderson, I don't know, but so that he has classes. My suggestions are that the parents talk to ACC and the parents talk to the Turin Scholars Program at the University of Texas and learn what is available. I don't want an automatic kibosh being put on what mom says by dad or vice versa. I order you to engage in discussions about this child, who is a very intelligent young man, and put your own interest aside. All right. Anything else?
Not on behalf of respondent, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Sheridan?
No, thank you, Judge, very much.
All right. Very good. All right. Well, with that, I appreciate you all. It's been a pleasure meeting all of you, and a particular honor to meet your very intelligent son who loves you both so much. All right. With that, we're going to jump off here. Mr. Turner, Ms. Sheridan, in the spirit of the new day, a cooperative spirit of co-parenting, I want you all to model good behavior for your clients. Get me an order that you both agree to. If there's something you need my assistance with, we can hop back on a Zoom call, or if we need to, and have a quick conference on it. Okay?
Sure will. Thank you. May we be excused?
You may be excused, but let me ask you, Mr. Turner, Ms. Sheridan,
Yep.
when do you think we could get this order back? Because I know that's something Ms. Guardiola likes to keep a close eye on.
I can get Ms. Sheridan in order by the end of the week, a draft. It's pretty simplistic, and then